So our guest today is a whole different kind of corn. Often we think about what we want to do when it comes to, silage corn in this area or field corn, but I have a friend from Twitter and his name is Will Bier, and Will is joining us because he's raised popcorn. So, Will, how are you? And please introduce yourself.
I am doing all right today. Hi, I'm Will Bier from Hannibal, Missouri, which is a pretty good clip from you guys today, I do believe. But we grow corn, soybeans, and grew popcorn on and off for about 25 years. Well, what do you want to know about popcorn?
Well, I think we want to know a lot of things about popcorn. So, do you treat popcorn any differently? Like when you're planting it, seed size is still the same. What about do you have longer maturities? Because I think there's a reason I'm not growing it here in North Dakota very often.
Um, we generally planted a lower population than we did field corn. Seed size is about like trying to plant soybeans with a corn meter. It was very tiny but consistent. We generally would tune our corn meters up or the metering system up for a smaller kernel. It was like 115, 116. Moisture was critical on it. You couldn't be too dry and you couldn't be too wet. You had to be just right to get it out or you'd crack the hull.
When you say moisture, Will, are you talking about Will, when you said that about moisture, you're talking moisture on the grain, not moisture as far as rainfall and so forth. Okay.
Right. The moisture content of the grain, yes. The actual number escapes me, but
okay.
Trying to think.
Okay.
Well, and for our listeners that don't know the difference, what's the difference in harvesting or just even raising field corn compared to popcorn variety?
You could get away. It looks the exact same in the field driving down the road. You look at it and you think that's very sad looking corn, but that makes great popcorn. You use P and K was the same. Is the same. Nitrogen you could run a little less because it is less hardy than field corn even today. All conventional corn herbicides worked on it. It had to be on label, which most of it is and was then. At the era we were growing it, the biggest problem we had was it was not an insurable crop in my county until we grew it long enough that they insured it.
So by a non-insurable crop, that meant that when you were raising it and if anything happened, you couldn't claim crop insurance on it, and that was just a complete out-of-pocket loss for you at the time, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes, a fantastic out-of-pocket loss, I might add. But, yeah, and I'm trying to think, we generally went from the combine to the truck to the processing plant. The least amount you handle it, the better. Because if you crack the hull of popcorn, you get old maids. So, yes. And that was the biggest thing you had to do. And believe it or not, the more worn out your combine was, the better. No.
Because it wasn't as tough on the kernels?
Yes. You had to pay very close attention, and they would send a test kit. What you do is you basically dipped it in iodine, and if the iodine was in the crack, you had a percentage amount per bushel that you could have, because you're going to crack it, you're going to damage it, as you move it. But that was the hard part. It was harder harvesting than it was growing it through the season. Is another thing too is they really didn't like if it got contaminated with soybean seed because they can't clean it out.
Because they're the same size.
Yes, they didn't mind field corn or some weed seed, something like that. But soybeans, oh no, they.
And when you harvest the popcorn, do you sell it locally, nationally, and how many popcorn growers are there around your area?
At the time we were running hard, there was about 10 of us, and we were growing it all for Weaver in Indiana and Illinois, and they would pay the trucking, and that was the Boy Scout popcorn that they used to sell door to door. There's still a few guys here grow it, but they're growing it and promoting it themselves as an end user. We were using it for replacement acres for soybeans at the time, and we just ran out of market. The company we're growing for pulled back into Indiana, and it was just too far to deal with it. But we still plant a little bit just to give to folks, and because everybody's amazed by popcorn, they have no idea what they think it's a bush or something. I wish I was kidding about that. Another thing that will happen on a paved county road is there's no ears on the end rows for about the first 6 in if they find out it's popcorn. I'm not saying my neighbors borrowed it, but
go ahead, Bridget. You got something relevant to this.
Yeah. If they just borrowed it. Okay, so a couple of things. Maybe it wasn't dry enough to pop yet, and were they just going to throw like the whole cob in the microwave? Any idea what the plan was when they borrowed some of your ears of corn?
I think they were going to get free popcorn, is what they thought. But yeah, we did. We have one farm on a pretty decent county road. They'd pick them clean as soon as the coffee shop found out it had pop. Oh, that's popcorn. And then nope. Not the first 8 rows, it's not.
Which
is fine. But...
Yeah. Is popcorn a large crop that's grown, regionally? I guess I'm not entirely sure where the bulk of popcorn is grown, and of the area that it is grown in. Is it like a large crop? A lot of people get involved with popcorn around the United States, or is it kind of like its own little niche market where not a lot of people participate in it?
Indiana, Illinois, Indiana grows a ton of it. It was giving you an opportunity to have less inputs and make pretty good money on corn. But for us, like I said, beans got better. Corn varieties got better, could handle drouthy, lighter dirt better, and you could do that, and the market went away. But you got to remember, popcorn, the expansion rate on popcorn is like 40 to 1. So an 80,000-pound load of popcorn is a lot. I mean,
that's a lot of
80,000 of that's 80,000 of those bags you see in your store shelf when you buy a pound of popcorn. I mean. And like I said, movie theater popcorn was the majority of it. That, and it went to that's what who we grew for at the time. That's who they were selling to, movie theaters, and like I said, the Boy Scouts. But and that popcorn had a thicker. If you ever look at your popcorn, some of it looks like a crab, and some of it looks like regular popcorn. One is harder than the other. It was engineered, bred to have a tougher hull. So you could make Cracker Jacks, kettle corn, stuff like that. It could be mechanically, mixed and blended and all that. Other than that, there's not much difference in popcorn that I recall.
So there's actually like a difference in varieties, if you will. Like you said, that harder hull and so forth. That I did not know either.
There's different varieties, and I do believe there's different maturity dates on it. Still, I was actually going to try to do my homework on this before we did this, and that didn't happen. So I'm in the way back machine on this today. I apologize, but it is a riot to grow. It is absolutely fun. Because again, my load of popcorn is mind-boggling.
What's the water needs for popcorn? Is it more of a drought-tolerant crop? Does it need a lot more moisture? Tell me a little bit more about that.
No, it was at the time we were doing it. Like I said, we put it on lighter soil, stuff like that. It would handle a drought better of the era. Now, I will tell you that the genetics in field corn have come a long way, in the last several years. But that's what we were doing with it: droughty soil, lighter soil, and it worked well. The other reason we do it was it let us get a whole bunch more organic matter in a bunch of ground that needed it. Because you could put corn on it instead of beans.
Mm-hmm. And Will, is it a profitable market for popcorn? Is it kind of a smaller market?
Where I'm at, it's smaller. It's harder to deal with than it was if we were closer to Central Illinois, closer to Indiana. Yeah, those guys have a market just like we do for beans or corn. Around here, it gets a little nichey. There's places you can sell it. There's There's a guy south of me that makes a pretty good living off of growing and bagging and selling his own popcorn, but he markets well too. When the opportunity gets right, we'll grow it again because it does make money. And like I said, it's fun.
So when you say it's fun, why is it fun? What's different versus corn or soybeans, traditional corn?
It's popcorn, man. Popcorn. Nobody's sad when they eat popcorn. Let you burn it, you know.
Yeah.
No, it's just the challenge of it, doing something a little different, you know. Just there's some more management issues to it on the weed control side of it that makes you think, lets you, if you got a gen ag degree, it lets you flex that a little bit, you know, and it's just fun. It's just different. I'm a big fan of the underdog, so that parlays into my operation too. We just like to do different stuff.
And what does the popcorn growing season look like? I mean, how long does it take popcorn to grow? When do you plant it? What time of the year do you harvest it?
We would plant it, you know, early mid-April for down here where I'm at. You know, that's when we start, and we would shell it there September, October. You mostly were dictated by moisture. You'd go check it and make sure you had it where you needed it. And then the logistics of it, because you had to line up trucking, because you just really don't want to store it. Because like I said, the more you handle it, the more you damage it.
Okay. And what kind of weather does popcorn thrive in? Is it just like a, you know, any ordinary corn? It's, you know, kind of similar,
like
you know,
any
it
other
likes the warmth and
just pretty much the same as corn or any other grass crop. It's just a little punier than field corn as far as it takes forever to come up. You know, it doesn't have the vigor that, you know, like I said, modern field corn. But as long as you know that going into it, you're not disappointed when you drive out and look at it and go, oh. But
well, here's a myth for you, and pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's a fun question. If it gets too hot, do you have to worry about your whole field popping off?
Oh, gee.
No, but I'm going to tell you, you're a brave man if you run it through a grain dryer.
Oh, yeah.
Have you
Well,
ever
you're either a
popped
brave
Jiffy
man
Pop?
or you better have butter.
Yeah, 'cause,
Yeah.
again, it will pop without oil. You can pop it without butter. You just don't want it to. You stand a chance of burning it. But yeah, that's always been the urban legend that somebody blew a bin up. Because again, it's 40-1. It expands 40 times its own size of the kernel when it pops. So yeah.
Now, Will, you said earlier that when you first started planting popcorn, it wasn't covered under insurance, but after a few years, it was. What's the reasoning behind that?
Because nobody had ever grown it commercially in my county.
Okay, so that was just locally, just for your county. Okay.
Yeah, just locally.
Okay.
You know, for us, and then us and several other guys got to growing it, and we finally got it added. Which, if you just about in this day and age, you can't do stuff like that anymore. Right. You know, and yeah, that was the only thing, and even then, it was of course, crop insurance in the '90s wasn't what it is today either. So it, you know, it. And we had a couple years that absolutely just about zeroed out from burning up, and yeah, it's a long day.
So, Will, when you're combining,
yes.
Oh, go ahead, finish your statement, and then I got a question for you about equipment.
Because it would only make 85 to like 110 bushel to the acre versus field corn. You know, it's a lighter crop too, but you're sowing it by the pound. You're not sowing it by the bushel. So, but
so
yeah,
what about Okay, so what about your equipment? Do you have a different header than what you're normally using with your regular field corn?
No, just at the time we used a Case IH corn head, and we made sure the deck plates moved because we would set them all the way in for popcorn. It was quite a bit smaller stalk and ear. Later on, when we got a corn head with adjustable on-the-go deck plates, it wasn't an issue. They always wanted a rotary-style combine, the IHs, the New Hollands, because they were a lot more gentle on it. And like I said, the more worn out, the better.
Well,
But
yeah, that gave you some flexibility. Very cool.
and we didn't unload in the grain cart, and we didn't unload on the go, and you unloaded at an idle because you just didn't want to crack it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that
Okay,
makes
I
great
got I
sense.
got another one for you, Will. This is something that people could probably just grow in their backyard garden. If somebody wanted to grow or try to grow popcorn in their home garden, and it came to be the end of the year and harvest, and you're doing it by hand versus with a combine, how would you go about that? I mean, what's the process look like? You just rip the sides off the corn and then just you know
Shuck corn
take it
and
off the
twist it.
cob, or
Yeah, take it off the cob because we had guys that would do that. You can't plant the corn. By the time they get done with it, it won't grow for what you're buying in the store. You've got to buy seed corn. But
Mhm.
you just grab it and shuck it off the deal. Of course, you can throw the cob in the microwave and pop it too, but pop it off the cob.
This sounds
It's
dangerous.
just
So So
it
you had
is.
mentioned earlier that it's kind of a fragile thing and you don't want to break it, and there was it had to have like the right moisture content, or otherwise it was it just wasn't really worth doing it, or it was a little more difficult to do it. How would you go about determining that if you were growing it in your home garden? How do you tell that okay, it's ready? And is there a special technique so you don't have to worry about damaging it, or is it more of the machine that would damage it versus your hand?
The machine would damage it versus your hand. No, my technique for in the garden would literally be get a cup and pop it. So, the moisture escapes me on it, on what it was. But like I said, the biggest thing we had to keep up on was not damaging it in the combine.
Okay.
And because like I said, if you crack it, it won't pop. That's what old maids are. The outer hull on its pot is cracked and it loses its moisture and it won't pop. No. And
So, Will,
no,
as we're
they do
winding
not
down,
pump butter through a center privet. So mm,
pump of butter through a center pivot. That's an
yeah.
awesome idea. Overhead sprinkling with butter on your popcorn. I like that. You'd have to add some salt though too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Ariel, I guess. I know a guy with a crop duster that would try it. So
So, Will, as we have our last few minutes here in our segment, you also have a fondness for Steiger tractors, which originated in this area. And how did that happen? A guy from Missouri who has a great fondness for Steigers. What brought that about?
um they're south of where I live is large, wide open country. And those boys were big before big was a thing. And they all had Steigers, so I equated that with success. If you had a Steiger, you were cool. So when time and I buy them and run them now, the older square nose ones, because they're affordable and you
Mhm.
can't kill them. They're old man proof, and there's something to be said for that. And we just love them. And they're just like growing popcorn. If there's a fleet of Steigers on the road, somebody or in the field, somebody's stopping and taking a picture every time. And they don't have to
Yes,
go, well,
yes, they
who's the
would
guy
be.
in the deer? So,
Mhm.
and I
Hmm.
Yeah,
think
those,
1, 2, 3. I've got 4.5 right now, and there's almost
four and a
always
half.
3 on the phone. 4.5. I got one for parts, man.
Hey, there
Yeah,
you go.
always. Yep,
Yeah,
you
those
always
those
have a parts
Steigers
one.
are super cool tractors, and I don't farm. I virtually farm, and those are the tractors I run in my game are Steigers because they pull and they're cheap.
Yes, that's exactly why we run them in real life. And and between Case IH today, who owns them, and a wonderful uh, company over in Minnesota called Big Tractor Parts, they'll run forever. And
Right.
all I know is every time one comes up for sale, I get 30 texts that I need to buy it. And I'm like, other people can own them too, but it's
Well,
they're again, it's fun. And they make me money. So that's why.
I look forward to you coming up here because some of the very first Steigers off the line are in a museum here in West Fargo, like the Panther, the Cougar, etc. So I think it's just fitting that you have a little road trip up to North Dakota so we can show you Steigers.
I'll be there. I'll come. My little brother actually hauled them out of Fargo for years for Case IH. No.
Yet another reason to like him. I suppose he's no longer doing it. He wasn't one of the guys who helped haul those Case Steiger quad tracks down to the port so they could be shipped down to Antarctica, huh?
No, he hauled them. He bring them back into here into the Midwest, but he always he said he liked it till it snowed.
Which is
We kind
3/4
of
of the
say
year
the
up
same
here.
thing.
Yes. I know that I quit complaining about the weather whenever I call the boys at Big Tractor because he's like, "Oh, it's 27 below zero, don't you know?" I'm like, "Well, it's 19. We'd take that." I'm like, "Okay." Of course, they think that I live in Florida up there. They think that I'm in the South, and I'm not. I'm in the I'm in the middle of the U.S. It's literally the middle. But
And you are close to the Mississippi River, if I'm not mistaken.
I could just about drop a rock in it if I hurled it where I'm at right now.
So with all of
Yeah,
the flooding in the past, I mean, I know the the Mississippi is down tremendously right now. How much have you noticed that? Because you've probably had land that was flooded out at one point by the Mississippi.
Oh yeah, you can tell. You really have to be doing something to flood the bottoms around here because of the levee districts. Okay, it's just, I mean, you've got to have 21 foot of river. It's about 10 right now up here, but we're above the lock and dam system where they maintain the depth for the barges. But it is low, and the biggest way you can tell is everybody's getting all their ditches and all the swales and all the low spots they haven't farmed in 10 years work. So, because we're not pushing any seep water, and that's the truth. But it's very low, and you can tell. However, what's going to happen is we're going to be burning up in June, throwing sandbags because it's all the snow up north. Promise you that. I predict that.
Well, we hope that the water levels go up down there. And I was going to ask, you had mentioned with the barge traffic, have you noticed much of that being affected due to the water levels along the Mississippi?
It has. It has. Up in here, it's not too bad. But as you get below us, they're having the loads. They can't get them. They can't. If they draft too deep, they're hanging them up. And the problem they're having with the lock and dams here is they've doubled their wait time to get the water to build the pool up. They close the dam, fill the pool up, so it's backing it up. And yes, it's affected because most of our grain goes to the river. 99% of it is going for export, and it's affected the basis on the markets here considerably.
Okay,
but right now, Upper River's closed. They close at this time of year till about March, for the freeze up or to do maintenance and stuff like that. So, I mean, that part we're kind of used to, but it's been weird. Ethanol plants and feed mills and stuff like that. This is the first time ever they were the premium to go to sell grain because the river was so inverted on the basis.
Right. I was just going to ask, you had mentioned with the ports being slowed down, or at least, the barges up and down the river, and you had mentioned that it's like 90 or maybe it was 99% goes into the rivers. If that's down and the barge traffic is less and less and they're closing down parts of it, then you have to rely on trucks or rail. And have you seen things slowing down that way just because everything has to switch to something where they're either threatening to strike or there's already a trucker shortage?
Yeah, they've rattled it up, and you'll get a text from, "Hey, we're full. We're going to be full for a couple of days." In my part of the world, there is not a lot of rail traffic on grain because, again, the river. Trucks, yeah, because they haul from the inland elevators to the river. But it's so funny to me because I have been blessed with a grain market that, unless you farm on the Mississippi River, you don't have. And I mean that. And when I say the Mississippi River, I mean it in all capital letters, by the way. So every other river is a creek compared to that girl. So,
any social media platforms, anywhere people can get in contact with you if they want to, or
Twitter's my favorite. The Marion County Farmer, and there is a long and just distasteful inside story to that. So we'll go with Marion County farmer. So